Hello and welcome to the Ham Radio Guy podcast. I'm Marvin and my call sign is W0MET. Whether you're an experienced ham or just getting started, this podcast is for you. We're bringing you the latest of topics, news, and information, and all things amateur radio right here to this show. This is episode number 28, and subscribe to wherever you get your podcast. Well, welcome back. This is my first recording here in my new location in Massachusetts. Now, this is a temporary setup for me as we first moved into the house and had some issues in the basement with some water coming in with some heavy rain here in Massachusetts a week or so ago. So we're just kind of, we wanted to put in some new flooring and tidy up the basement a little bit as we got in the new house. And again, just a few days into it, we had water. So my studio is my wife's temporary desk upstairs here in the loft. And, this is where I want to be for a little while until we can get the flooring and everything taken care of down there in the basement where I've got a full room set up or ready to be set up and put together as soon as we can get new flooring installed. So that is, kind of the update where we're coming from here. This is a live video podcast now I'm trying to push for, and we'll see how this goes. And hoping that this will be a new way to go to upload videos to YouTube, and you can see me as well, and we'll have more interaction as we go. And in this episode, I want to talk a little bit about exploring the world of amateur radio. So often I think there's quite a few people who get into it, and I know several who have that just don't do anything with it. And why they decide not to go there, I'm not sure. When there's so many different opportunities and things to explore within the amateur radio world. So before I get into that, there's things I'll kind of touch base on first, but that will be the topic for this week. And I hope you'll stay tuned for that as we go. One of the things I wanted to touch base on is a product that I've been using for quite a while. It's now in the Amazon fastening reusable double-sided self-gripping cable management. It comes in like two spools of 80 feet roughly, and it's about a half-inch wide. But it's a product, I'll provide a link in the show notes on this. And I've used this through my moving as a tool to wrap all kinds of sorts of cables. I used HDMI cables and Ethernet and coax and computer power cables just to help keep things all together. It was nice to be able to cut my own length and to be able to wrap around a power supply or an extra large set of cables or something. So I'll provide that link again to this Amazon Velcro that you can cut your own length. It's a great cable. It seems to stay well fastened, and I think it's a great product overall. So I just want to touch base with that. One of the things that I've been using a lot and continue to use as well as much as I can in all my cable management, just in trying to set new things up even around the house here and wrapping the Velcro and stuff up around the new cables around the TV or something. I did provide a link, I think, in some prior episodes. I do have a new newsletter that I'm setting up and that I've signed up, you got to sign up for. And I've tweeted that out several times, and I hope that you will subscribe to my newsletter as well. It's zero cost, free to you, and I'll provide insightful tips and hints, and some bits and some tech pieces in there along the way. So, I've got a trailer question I'm going to be posing out there on Twitter. I don't really have any other platforms right now, unfortunately. Maybe I'll look at creating a Ham Radio Guy Discord, but it seems like there's so many other Discord channels out there. I hate to just create another a group for that. Maybe I'll create a Slack group, maybe, see if people want to join that one, see where that goes. But I know a lot of people are on Discord as well, and a lot of people do use it. It's a great place to go. So we'll see what that one looks like, and maybe I'll consider doing that. But right now, my platform is Twitter, and my question is going to be do I use a cord pass-through for like an RV to put my coax cable into the trailer, or should I use like the barrel connectors with the nuts and the rubber washers on each side within the trailer to use my coax for the inside of the trailer? It just stays connected all the time. or do we look at just connecting it to the outside when needed? And again, the coax on the inside, and maybe I can disconnect if I need to. It's not in the way. And, maybe where's the best placement for that? I personally think it's going to be up front somewhere. But just trying to get some other feedback on that. I've looked at, again, different ways of doing this. And I've got some mixed feelings from people here and there around what's the best way to get the coax into the trailer and keep it there. Yep, it's evening time here and still drinking my coffee away. Can't go wrong with it. It's a good afternoon drink. It's one of my things of the day. So I don't really have any vendor highlights for this episode here. Sponsor as always. I still have Club Gear Online, and he continues to push out new items and whatnot. Go to him for all your POTA swag, ham radio gear, and check out those items released. One of the things being the desktop mat, the POTA keychains, the metal band plans, all very popular. What I realized I got from him, again, he is my brother, is that I was operating HF Mobile in my vehicle, and I realized I didn't really carry a band plan with me, and it was like, well, where does 10 meter stop? In the 28 megahertz area. It's kind of a pretty wide band and broad area to go play radio. So he has these plans that are, or band cards that are about the size of a wallet, and they fit great in like a little, you've seen those little rubber holders that people put on the back of their phones. It's got, for credit cards or driver's licenses. He's got similar ones that have POTA logos on them. And I got one of those that fit perfectly in the visor, and it fits great in there to be able to access my bands quickly when I'm operating HF Mobile. So he has everything you can possibly think of. He can customize coins or poker chips, QSL cards, and other gear. Just email him direct from the website or visit clubgearonline.com. Well, as we kind of end in 2023 here, my first probably big year of really pushing podcast and getting a lot of them up and running. And I think it's been a good run for this year. I've appreciated doing it. I've enjoyed doing these podcasts, and I've had a lot of fun with it. I hope that you found value and content relative to your everyday ham radio operation, and that you have got insight into what's going on, whether it be maybe an upcoming ham fest in your area, or possibly some event that went on, or just some regular news that you might not have heard of otherwise, or some topic that I may have covered talking about parks in the air, or maybe I talked about emergency communications. So anyway, I really appreciate the listeners. We've certainly surpassed, I think, 3,500 and maybe even 4,000 downloads this year. And I think that's doing pretty darn well. I can't complain about that at all. But if you'd like to continue to help support the channel and become a patron, look for me on buymeacoffee.com/the ham radio guy. There's 3 levels you can support me at, just $1 a month for the technician, or, move all the way up to the extra class membership and get extra benefits, get early release of information if you want. So anyway, I hope that you will find this, useful, and I appreciate you supporting the channel and what you got. With the amateur radio news release of, December 27th here, I'm not going to push anything out this week. I've really got a lot more of a topic talking about exploring the world of amateur radio that I want to get into. But, the most important thing this week is just trying to figure out why people get into amateur radio and don't do a lot with it, when there's so many different things like on the air and technical, experimental, instructional, and teaching others about ham radio, emergency, community service, and just even a social aspect of it, even of having the ability to communicate with others and join clubs and whatever the case might be. So as we move into the topic of the week here, again, kind of short and brief for some, but it is my first video podcast, and it is the first from a new location here in Massachusetts, and in a temporary location. Not the greatest of setup, maybe, but hopefully it will do well, and I hope that you'll enjoy this topic and think about these things and find some of those people that I'm talking about here and maybe look at mentoring them here in 2024. Now, what I've found is, I'll call these informal observations, and many licensees are not active in amateur radio at all, which I've mentioned. And most of those that are active are VHF and UHF, and I can say I was in those exact same two fields for many years of my amateur radio career. When I first got my license, I was kind of active. I was on and off VHF, UHF repeaters, and did some occasional simplex. Maybe did a little bit of Skywarn type of stuff occasionally, but I didn't really get into HF. I didn't upgrade my licenses. I didn't really get into any of that, and it wasn't until I moved to Tennessee when I really got more excited about amateur radio and moving up. And everything I did was more on a local level. So, is this a question of people getting into amateur radio and being bored? Or do they just not understand all the different areas in amateur radio that you can explore? And, I think, there's a lot of possibilities and areas that people just are familiar with and they don't know, and maybe they're even, I don't want to say scared, but just a fear of the unknown of what to do or how to get into it, and we don't do a great job training or mentoring others to help them once they get their license. So there's so many things you can do, of doing digital modes on HF, or you can become an instructor and teach courses, do Morse code, you can do de-expeditions, you can do contesting, you join a club, there's Skywarn, learn how to build an antenna, do APRS, be a part of ARRL, you can do POTA or SOTA, Islands on the Air, just MCOM, and just build battery boxes and all kinds of stuff you can get into and start to learn amateur radio with. And I mean, those are just, again, I just touched base on the highlight of a few. And so I think there's a lot more that people would enjoy getting into if they just knew more about it. And the thing with amateur radio is we have so much more of a wide spectrum of radio frequencies to go play on compared to like FRS or GMRS, MERS, any of those frequencies like that. A CB, we're like unlike any other radio service across the board, and we can talk to faraway places, and we can talk locally. We can go, with the digital mobile radio or Yaesu System Fusion DMR, talk around the world on a 2-meter handheld. It's crazy all the things that we can do. And so my question first is, what allures you, or what allured you into amateur radio? What was your topic or subject that got you interested, and why? And so I would like to know that, and maybe that's a question I'll pose on Twitter by chance. And we get to do all this without the really using internet. I'm sure APRS and System Fusion and some of these things do use internet, but we don't necessarily need it. We have, the great thing of propagation that allows us to get into amateur radio and really talk around the world with it. and that's just a beautiful thing, really, in my mind. And I think it's great. And make sure it's still recording there. There we go. And so, I mean, you've got just within HF bands itself, you can do phone or CW. You can do any type of digital, PSK, FT8, FL Digi, WinLink. You can do slow scan TV. So many different things on HF you can do alone that it's worth the world of exploring and really enjoying. So I have absolutely just a blast getting in and doing some of these things. Now, there's things like CW. Do I have interest? I do. I have a fear myself. I don't understand hearing the different tones between dits and das and spaces between the different words. FT8 and FT4, I've done some FT8, very similar to FT4, but I kind of find it boring, to be honest. I can sit there and make contacts over voice and just have a pile up and work those, and it's just great. There's nothing more like a rush than getting that to happen, and being out at a park or being at your house and doing some type of contest or even a field day is just absolutely a rush. And I've known people who went out and started doing parks in the air, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is so much fun!" And that's what drove them to do more and more and more, and they got really interested with things just because of that. So I think that makes a world of difference. Again, there's field days or winter field days. There's contesting. You can do DXing and go around the world. Or if you just have friends that you want to talk with around the world, around the country on a regular basis, that's things you can certainly do. So those are all very popular things that people get to do on ARRL activities on their time and their dates. There's also special activities or events that you have, like the Parks on the Air plaque event. You have Route 66, the 13 colonies. You've got the 12 Days of Christmas, all kinds of different special events. There's battleship events and the Indy 500 event every year. They do for the race car, they have a special event station for that. So you can just do chasing events with certificates and whatnot alone and just stay busy with those. I don't think there's a weekend that goes by throughout the year that there's probably not a special event or contest weekend going on of some sort within amateur radio. I mean, the schedule is usually just absolutely just packed to try and find a free weekend to do some of the things. And I know that's even one of the challenges that, Parks on the Air has had before in trying to do a plaque event. So, nets are another event that you can check in on the Marine Net or the Old Miss Net. And there's the... there's another big one I'm thinking of that I'm missing, and I'm sure if I had somebody live here, we could talk about it, and I'd know exactly what we're talking about. But I want to say it's a CQ one of some sort. But you can find nets. I mean, there's Christian nets and all kinds of different things out there along the way that you can do, and just almost do those constantly as well. There's usually a net on the air sometime throughout the day, most time periods. So. Feel free to always hop on one of them. Now, a lot of these things I'm talking about are HF related, and they do require you to get your general or extra license. But there's more you can do on VHF and UHF too, don't get me wrong. But I think your world of opportunity that opens up to you is much greater when you can get your HF license and start being in a general or extra class, and the opportunities for you to do even more is just greater because you have more band privilege at that point. So don't think just because you don't have your HF that you can't do these things, but maybe you can't do quite as much. There's still WinLink over, VHF and UHF. There's still contacts over long distances through DMR, Fusion. You can, Echo Link, all kinds of stuff there. You have all-star nodes. You can do crossband repeater connections. So there is a lot you can do with VHF and UHF as well. And it's not just limited to what you got, but let's really dig into this a little bit more. Is, again, when I did VHF and UHF, I was fine with that for a long time. But I didn't really know that you had WinLink over, VHF or Vera FM, WinLink Express. I didn't know about those type of things. DMR and C4FM, I don't think in the late 90s was really there. I think they've kind of come into existence since then. I could be wrong, but I don't really recall them back then being such a big thing. But, sometimes people hear amateur radio. It's like, well, that's dead. Then nobody's doing any of that anymore. There's no Morse code. And I think Morse code actually today is probably more alive than dead, as I know more and more people have gotten to be able to pass and take on Morse code and have the ability to perform, CW conversations. So I would beg to differ on that. And if you have a different comment, please feel free to let me know. Tweet it out. Let me know. Include me on that. I'd love to hear more on a conversation about that. Love to be able to talk about somebody more about that and what that exists of the existence of CW. And I think it's really got more of an increased following now than it probably ever has. And there's probably less people doing it than single sideband, but more people are getting into it because there's a lot of room down there in the CW area of the bands typically where people operate that aren't being used, that you can, and of course you can get through a lot better on CW than you can even on a voice operation. So I think people are starting to learn that and pick that up a little bit more. But did cell phones and text messaging kill amateur radio? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think there's more people getting into that, especially since COVID. More people have gone into ham radio than ever before. And the number of licenses have certainly increased across the board. Now, I mean, you used to have things like auto patch with cell phones that, don't really exist anymore on repeaters. But there may be a few repeaters out there still with them. But it's not needed necessarily, especially with the amount of cell coverage that we have. And, if you talk about FM simplex contacts, we know those are just, point-to-point stations using, direct contact without going through a repeater. And a lot of people through FM, VHF and UHF, can make a contact through DMR, D-Star Fusion. I kind of mentioned that a few minutes ago. Over longer distances, you can be into groups and get into sessions, and you can, again, talk on Echo Link via the internet and be part of other groups as well. Now, those groups are not necessarily interchangeable. They are kind of standalone per se, but they are good to be a part of. I've got DMR and Fusion myself, hoping to put up a new Fusion gate here of some sort that people can access down the road. I haven't got there yet, but again, trying to get that basement squared away, and we'll get there. So there's, single sideband 2 meters. Now, talk about something that's kind of dead and not very active. You've got to really hit those 2 meter hotspots when they come through, when propagation is just right to really make a good contact down there in that lower 144, like 200, I think it is your single sideband operations for VHF. But I've tried to use it several times. I've got an ARRL antenna. No, I'm sorry. It's an elk antenna that I've tried to use during field days and make some VHF, UHF contacts with it. Haven't had a lot of luck, but maybe we'll try again this year. I will be in Massachusetts, a different group, more heavy, dense population here, so we might see what we can do for summer field day. I will be tied up with winter field day on another event, but something we can certainly look at doing. Other things that besides just repeater operation or simplex operation, you can do IMCOM, or you can send WinLink over FM. You can do Echolink. Can you do SOTA over up on the hilltops, summits with VHF, UHF? Absolutely, you certainly can. Is it a little tougher? Probably. It's even probably tougher with doing parks on the air and making a park-to-park contact over a VHF, UHF, unless you had kind of a group of you in a certain range with several people in different parks, and kind of have it prearranged like an event. And that would, maybe help you get some parks on the air contacts that way. But summits on the air, I've known several people to do VHF contacts on that, or UHF, and that actually works out really well. So not bad there. But there's all kinds of local nets usually on VHF, UHF you can get. And of course, one of the things that I had a guy in my local club back in Tennessee, fairly young in amateur radio, fairly young himself, and he was able to do satellites, and he got a whole kit put together, and he did a great job at it, making contacts, and you become part of AMSAT and work some of those stations on satellites when the satellites pass over and through the area, and it can just be an absolute blast. Something I got into amateur radio for myself, but I've never really spent a lot of time doing. Again, something I want to learn, something I want to do is satellite operation. I've got the tools to do it, but just kind of taking that first step and trying to do it without feeling like I'm going to fail because I can't make my first contact, or maybe I don't hear them, or they don't hear me. I'll be honest with you. It's just, it is the way it goes. And so I'm kind of hoping that, something I can get into, maybe we'll try that more this summer and see how that works. Another thing I've talked about was just briefly, I mentioned was IMCOM and being involved in your local ARRLs or your local EMA, emergency management agency, and having being a part of the local emergency communication group that will have times of disaster, that strike, that you can be called out to assist with that communication, and hope that you can be an integral part of that event when that happens. And that's a lot to prepare for. Usually you have like a task book you want to be part of, and things you need to know about emergency operations and how those work. And taking some of those courses, like your 100, 200, 700, 800 courses, NIMS courses, National Emergency Management Agencies, those are certainly helpful to have. And a lot of like ARRLs groups and stuff or clubs will require you to have those as part of your license as well. One of the things that's probably the most fun to do is a fox hunt as well for doing VHF and UHF operation. Sometimes people will just put those foxes out there at random, and you find the tone, and you just go to follow it and see if you can hunt it down. So there's so many different things where you can operate. You can operate at home, just in your 2-meter FM, VHF, UHF station at home. You can have obviously mobile. We had a morning drive club that several of us would get on, and we're always driving downtown every day to work. And so we'd, have our morning roundtable that we did. You can have your portable operations, probably more HF more than VHF, but you can do that. Again, your D expeditions, and then you have your POTA, SOTA, Islands on the Air, etc. You have your field days, winter and summer. So feel free to have different ways to operate where you can participate still. there's all kinds of, again, anniversaries and historical famous people out there that have had amateur radio call signs. And, you feel free to explore those and find some of those on your own. I'll see if I can find a couple links and put them in show notes if I can, to some of the special event stations like 13 Colonies, Route 66, 12 Days of Christmas. Those are the ones that really come to mind. There's another one that's in like August or September, I think around Labor Day weekend. There's a Battleship on the Air one. Again, some of those special events that that really is fun to get those certificates or get the QSL cards from them. And so that's a lot of fun in itself. So if you get into amateur radio and you don't find what you're looking for getting your radio license, ask somebody, talk to them. Sometimes I've seen a lot of people just go out and get their bail thing, $25 radio, and they're now calling themselves ham radio. I've got my license, I've got my radio, I'm good to go. That's all I need. And I really, I'm kind of like, I always just shake my head and go, big sigh, It's like, okay, let me help you out here. And there's so many people that I have helped, and people have come up to me as I left Tennessee and said, hey, we really appreciate you. That's why we got into ham radio, because of you. And, that's always a great feeling, and I appreciate hearing that, and I'm glad that I could help make other people's amateur radio experience as good as it has been for me, and what I've had happen. But, I can't tell you what piece of equipment is right to buy for you. Not sure what equipment you need. I can usually give you some suggestions. I'm always glad to help. Give you some antennas. I had a guy who was wanting to put a ATAS 120 on his chimney, Is it possible? Yeah. Is it the greatest antenna to use for that? Probably not. So, sometimes maybe it's just a fear of how to program the VHF and UHF radios. Here I am now new to Massachusetts, and I have to reprogram all my radios to now include Tennessee. Of course, I'm a part-time resident of Wisconsin, and now I'm here, and there's a lot of travel between Wisconsin and Kansas City, where my family is. So I'll have a whole bank of different radios, and I wish more radios would have banks so I could quickly switch to those when need to. But I think programming radios, it is very time consuming. It can be challenging when you're trying to figure out how to set up this right sequence to get the radio to read or write. You definitely have to read the manual sometimes, or watch some videos on YouTube to help figure some of those things out, how somebody else might have done it on that radio. And then knowing where to find some of those things, whether it's radio reference, the repeater book, the ARRL, just manually doing it, page by page in the old ARRL repeater book that they produce still. So I prefer to do radio reference and the repeater book online. That is my go-to most of the time. But that's kind of where I've gone with it. That's what I've always done. I do like sticking with, most of my radios are Yaesus, so I can use some similar software sometimes, and it's a little easier to program versus having an Elenco handheld and a Kenwood, mobile, and then you have, a Yaesu HF, and so it can become complicated to have all the different types of radios. And I would suggest if you kind of get it, you stick with, with what you got. If you got Yaesu handhelds, then go Yaesu mobile and Yaesu HF. It just makes it easy, but you can certainly do what you want there. So, I think sometimes people just getting started after buying the radio is getting on the air and getting, getting that to work, having the mic right. And getting on there, but now getting on the air. So it can always be kind of fun and challenging as well. Maybe go reach out to your local club, find out what others have for radios, because they might have programming cables. They've got a programming already code plug created for you. They might be able to loan your radio. Say, hey, I'm looking to buy a new radio. I really look at like maybe say the Yaesu FT5D, and you're going, well, let me see if I have somebody that has one here locally that you can play with it, figure it out, see if you like it or not before you go spend the $500 for the new radio. Is always a great way to go as well. There's so much when you go to Ham Radio Outlet or Gigaparts and you look online or any other of the other major vendors that sell radios, or you look at the ICOM or Yaesu websites even, and Kenwood kind of in there too, but I'd say Yaesu and ICOM are the two major ones. And you kind of look at what radios were there, or you go to a Hamfest and you start looking at all the different radios on the different used equipment on the tables in the we call it the junkyard sometimes, but usually there's some very fine radios and great equipment in there that one man's trash is another man's treasure, they say. So but what radio is good? How do you know what's good, what's bad? Have you tested it? Can you check it out? So it's just a lot to really get in touch with and to figure out when you're first getting into this. It can be very overwhelming, I have no doubt. I usually recommend the radio, if Yaesu has a code plug program software for programming your radio, I would suggest using that. Chirp is a great way to go, but it doesn't cover all radios sometimes, and more of the ICOM and Yaesu radios. It will cover some of those, but not all of them all the time. I guess it's going to be a longer podcast here, as we're going 36 minutes into this now. Again, that's a lot to kind of take in and really figure out. A lot of roadblocks I could really try and cover and go into it. And really, I think maybe I might create a second podcast out of this, because if I go into this, I could be another, several minutes looking at some of these things. But thinking of, becoming a member of your club, and looking at, net control maybe, and so many different things that you have to try and figure out as you get into what are grid squares, and learning logging software, learning the programming software for the radios, those sort of things. How to, follow people on podcasts, and who do you follow, and what are your interests there. There's some great YouTubers out there that really do put out a great video. I've kind of all considered myself always just a podcast, an audio one, but I've gotten increased views on YouTube, and I think people may want to see that or sit there and just listen to it as we go. So we're trying to put this together and see how this works. But there's, again, so many different things that you can do in amateur radio. Even on educational support, you can support youth activities, and you can learn how to do kit building. There's a guy out in Nebraska, I'm going to draw a blank on his name and call sign offhand. I want to say N0NAB or something like that, or K0NAB. And I know that's not exactly right, but you'll see him at Hamfest. He's got the big Sam I Am, Curious George type hat on, big tall red hat. And I know people are going to go, oh, that's him. It's like, yeah, and I'm drawing a blank on his name off the top of my head as I, go through this podcast. But he's great at technical building activities. He does a great job at it. I had a guy in my club who did Arduino. He enjoyed doing it. And, we built a few antennas, even my club, as we did some dipoles, and we did a J-pole out of copper pipe. So, even nowadays, as much as getting into amateur radio with computer and using those devices to log your software and create sound modes for WinLink or FT8, linking computers together for field days, remote operation with computers, repeater controlling programming, just all kinds of stuff that you can get into for, social media, watching your amateur radio, YouTubers, just doing your maybe your club activities, whether it be treasury work or something else that you're getting involved in. So there's just so much stuff that, I could look into. Again, I've talked about income a little bit. We've talked about, local stuff, getting into emergency management. I hope that you can find your path that you're wanting to go, and depending on your license class. And if you are a technician, find a way to upgrade to general so you can do more, upgrade, expand your possibilities. There's lots of clubs and licensees ways to get licensed out there. I would say ham radio prep would be my choice, and then getting testing through the W5YI group. But, that doesn't necessarily mean that's the only way you go. There's ham radio tests and all kinds of other ways. You can find a local club that may be putting on a sponsorship of a technician course, and maybe you'll find a training net of some sort. There's people who on YouTube who have done ham radio courses. So, just, find a buddy, maybe study with them, get them involved in amateur radio. There's all kinds of different ways to do that. And so, find your path of what you want to do in ham radio and go for it. Learn that. Become a field expert on what you want to do. Whether, again, a satellite operation, you want to do FTA to know everything about that. Know everything about APRS. You want to just go with contesting or DXing and become, get all the certificates, do all the different special event stations. I mean, again, your opportunity is just endless, basically, of what you can do. So, find activity and try it. And if you don't like it, then move on to something else that might be, something more up your lines of what you want to do. And, having a mentor available to you to help you with some of these things when you don't know what the answer is or how to go about doing it can make all the difference in the world. So, I hope that you'll find something in your amateur radio exploration in 2024 that will, get you excited, that you'll learn from, and that you can, find ways to keep up with the amateur radio news and events and everything that's changing about it all the time. It is constant. It is constantly changing, and there are things that are happening all the time in amateur radio, and it is not boring or dying by any means. I want to say thank you for listening this week, and hope that you enjoyed this topic and that you found interesting stuff around this. So please feel free to reach out again with any questions or comments that you have. And if you would like to know more, please contact me, W0MET at thehamradioguy.com. Well, if you're looking for all things ham radio related, visit the Ham Radio Guy website at thehamradioguy.com for informative content, product reviews, show notes, and exciting blog posts. Join the conversation on your favorite podcast platform to stay up to date with the latest trends and news in the ham radio world. Connect with us on Twitter at the Ham Radio Guy for even more updates and engaging interactions. And don't miss out on the fun and knowledge sharing, and subscribe to the Ham Radio Guy today. Again, reach out to that newsletter, and we'll keep you up to date with what's going on. Well, we're just shy of the new year here. January 6th, Ham Radio University is hosting the ARRL New York City Long Island Section Convention in Brookville, New York. January 19th to the 20th, the Cowtown Ham Fest. Of course, I can imagine where that's going to be at. The ARRL North Texas Section Convention in Forest Hills, Texas. And the Winterfest, I hope that would be somewhere in a place that might be cold. The ARRL Midwest Division Convention in Collinsville, Illinois. And finally, of course, where we'll probably all be meeting, I won't be there, unfortunately, is Orlando Hamcation, hosting the ARRL Florida State Convention in Orlando, Florida, February 9th through the 11th. So, again, I've got some other ties going on February 9th through the 11th. I'd love to be at Orlando, but we'll hopefully see you soon after. Definitely a date, and I will be there. Well, I want to wish you all a happy new year. And I want to thank all of you who have downloaded episodes, became subscribers, and I'm proud to be a part of the Ham Radio family. Hope that you will continue to follow me in the new year as we continue to explore new topics and have new interviews. I've got some exciting things coming up and planned as we go forward. And again, if you enjoy the podcast, we'd appreciate if you become a subscriber wherever you get your podcast. And if you can rate or review the show, go out to Spotify or Apple Podcast. Hell, you can just go old school and tell friends and family and neighbors. Anybody you think that might want to hear a podcast like this with it's informative and newsworthy. If you're on social media, be sure to follow us on Twitter at buymeacoffee.com and listen to the YouTube version on the W0MET channel. Again, hopefully you learned something this week and that you will help you in your ham radio operations. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them on Twitter or podcast platforms, or email me at w0met@thehamradioguide.com. As always, this is your ham radio buddy in the chair and on the air, the ham radio guy. I say 73.